The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clanged against the concrete floor of my garage. 10:30 at night, and I was still under the hood of my battered F-150, trying to coax another year out of the engine that had seen better decades. This was my slice of the American dream, a cramped garage attached to a house that needed new shingles in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else's business. Through the thin walls, I could hear voices rising in the kitchen. Mira's sharp tone cut through the night air like a blade, followed by our 17-year-old daughter Kayla's equally cutting response. "Dad's a joke, Mom," Kayla was saying, her voice dripping with teenage disdain. "Why not be with someone who actually excites you? Uncle Silas is like 10 times the man he is." I froze, my hand still gripping the oil-stained rag. Uncle Silas. My half-brother, with his flashy car and his finance job downtown. The golden boy who'd always managed to make me look like yesterday's newspaper. Mira's laugh was bitter. "You don't understand, honey. It's complicated." "What's complicated? You're miserable. Dad works on cars all day and smells like motor oil. Silas takes you to nice places, buys you things. I've seen the way you look at him during family dinners." My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. "So that's the game, huh? They want a real man. Guess I'll show them what a real bastard looks like." I stayed under the truck for another 20 minutes, listening to them discuss my inadequacies like I was some broken appliance they were considering replacing. When the house finally went quiet, I made my way inside, tracking oil across Mira's pristine kitchen tiles. She was already in bed, pretending to sleep. I stood in the doorway, watching her fake the steady breathing of someone lost in dreams. 22 years of marriage, and I was just now seeing her clearly. The next morning started like any other. Mira left early for her law firm, power suit pressed, briefcase in hand, not even a goodbye kiss. Kayla grabbed a granola bar and headed to school without acknowledging my existence. Just another day in paradise. But as I loaded the washing machine, something crinkled in Mira's jacket pocket. A phone. Not her regular iPhone with the pink case, but a cheap flip phone that looked like something a drug dealer would use. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My hands shook as I powered it on. No password protection. Sloppy, Mira. The text messages told a story that made my stomach turn. Messages to Silas, explicit and mocking. Messages to her best friend Anna, plotting and scheming. Voice memos that painted me as a pathetic loser who couldn't satisfy his wife in any meaningful way. The hotel receipt tucked behind the phone's battery was the final nail in the coffin. The Riverside Inn, room for two, spa package included. Silas's credit card number at the bottom. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something shift inside me. The hurt was there, sure, but underneath it was something colder, something calculating. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that the quiet mechanic they'd been underestimating had a few tricks of his own. I spent the rest of the morning at my auto shop, going through the motions of running my business while my mind worked overtime. My employees, 3 good guys who'd been with me for years, could sense something was off, but they knew better than to pry. Around lunch, I got a text from Mira. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up." I almost laughed out loud. Working late. Right. That evening, I followed her silver BMW from a distance, watching as she pulled into the parking lot of the Riverside Inn. The same sleazy roadside motel from the receipt. 5 minutes later, Silas's ridiculous red sports car pulled up beside hers. I parked across the street and waited, camera ready. Through the thin curtains of room 237, I could see shadows moving. My wife of 22 years and my half-brother, the man who'd stood as best man at our wedding. The photos I took were clear enough for court, but that wasn't what I had in mind. I had bigger plans. Before leaving, I slipped a note under Silas's windshield. "Family is thicker than thieves." Then, using my pocket knife, I gave his fancy tires some much-needed ventilation. Not enough to cause an accident, just enough to strand him at a motel with my wife while he waited for roadside assistance. The security camera at the motel's front office probably caught my truck, but I wasn't worried. Let them wonder. My phone buzzed as I drove home. Text from Mira. "We need to talk. Now." I smiled and kept driving. Not home, though. I had a stop to make first. Sam Parker's boxing gym stayed open late for guys like me, blue-collar workers who needed to hit something after a long day. Sam had been my best friend since high school, back when we both thought we might make something of ourselves in the ring. "You look like hell," Sam said as I walked in, still wearing my oil-stained work clothes. "Feel worse," I admitted, wrapping my hands. But I think that's about to change. I spent an hour working the heavy bag, each punch driving home the reality of my situation. My wife was cheating. My daughter thought I was worthless. My half-brother was probably laughing about it with his finance buddies downtown. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. The confrontation came sooner than expected. I walked into our kitchen the next morning to find Mira pacing like a caged animal, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her makeup smeared. "Where were you last night?" she demanded, not even bothering with pleasantries. "Working," I said, pouring myself coffee. "You know, that thing I do to pay for this house and your daughter's private school tuition." "Don't play games with me, Rylan. Someone slashed Silas's tires at the Riverside Inn. Someone left him a threatening note." I took a slow sip of coffee, meeting her eyes over the rim of my mug. "Threatening?" I thought it was more philosophical, family loyalty and all that. Her face went pale. "You followed me." "Didn't have to. You left the evidence in your jacket pocket. Burner phone, hotel receipts, the whole amateur spy kit. For a lawyer, you're remarkably bad at covering your tracks." Kayla chose that moment to walk into the kitchen, phone already in her hand, probably ready to document another one of Dad's embarrassing moments for her social media followers. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between us. "Your mother's been having an affair with Uncle Silas," I said conversationally. "Thought you should know, since you seem to think he's such a catch." Kayla's phone clattered to the floor. Mira's face went from pale to crimson. "How dare you?" Mira started. "How dare I what? Tell the truth? You've been screwing my brother for months, maybe longer. You've been using our daughter to humiliate me. You've been planning to leave me for a man who's never worked an honest day in his life. So tell me, Mira, what exactly don't I dare do?" The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Finally, Kayla picked up her phone and fled upstairs. Mira sank into a chair, all the fight gone out of her. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. "How was it supposed to happen? You and Silas ride off into the sunset while I pay alimony and pretend everything's fine at family gatherings?" She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I want a divorce," she said. "I figured. But it's not going to be as easy as you think." The next few days passed in a blur of cold shoulders and whispered phone conversations. Mira moved into the guest room, claiming she needed space to think. Kayla avoided both of us, spending most of her time at friends' houses. But the real drama was just beginning. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when it involves prominent families. Mira's law firm was one of the most respected in the county, and Silas worked for the biggest investment company in the region. Their affair was gossip gold. Anna Peterson, Mira's best friend and fellow lawyer, seemed particularly interested in spreading the news. She called the house 3 times in 2 days, ostensibly to offer support, but I could hear the excitement in her voice. She was enjoying this. My auto shop became ground zero for local speculation. Customers who'd barely acknowledged me before suddenly wanted to chat about my personal life. Most were sympathetic, but I could see the pity in their eyes. Poor Rylan couldn't keep his wife happy. The breaking point came on Thursday evening. I was closing up the shop when Silas's red sports car pulled into the parking lot. He climbed out wearing a $1,000 suit and a smug expression that made me want to introduce his face to my wrench collection. "We need to talk," he said, straightening his tie. "Do we?" "This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Mira's upset, Kayla's confused, and frankly, you're embarrassing the family." I laughed, actually laughed. "I'm embarrassing the family? That's rich, coming from the guy who's been sleeping with his brother's wife." Silas had the decency to look uncomfortable, but only for a moment. "Look, these things happen. Adults make adult decisions. Mira and I. We have something special. Something you couldn't give her." "Like what? Debt? Because I know about your little gambling problem, brother. I know about the money you've been borrowing from clients' accounts. I know a lot of things." His confident expression faltered. "You don't know anything." "Try me." For the first time since we were kids, I saw fear in Silas's eyes. Good. It was about time he realized that quiet didn't mean stupid. "Stay away from Mira," he said, backing toward his car. "This doesn't have to get ugly." "Too late for that," I called after him. "It got ugly the moment you decided to betray your own family." He drove off without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. If anything, it was just getting started. That night, I received an anonymous envelope in my mailbox. No return address, no postmark. Inside were photographs that made my stomach drop. Mira and Anna, in what was clearly an intimate embrace. Not sisterly affection, but something much more personal. A note was paper-clipped to the photos. Looks like the family tree has more rotten branches than you thought. I stared at the images until my eyes burned. My wife wasn't just cheating with my brother, she was cheating with her best friend too, and someone else knew about it. The game was getting more complicated, but I was starting to enjoy the challenge. The next morning brought clarity. I'd spent the night thinking, planning, and by sunrise, I knew exactly what needed to happen. Mira and Silas wanted to play dirty? Fine. But they were about to learn that I'd been playing nice up until now. My first move was financial. As the primary breadwinner and the one who'd been managing our accounts for 22 years, I had access to everything. I didn't steal. That would be illegal and stupid. But I did exercise my legal right to protect our assets during what was clearly going to be a messy divorce. The joint account that funded Kayla's private school tuition suddenly developed technical difficulties. The direct deposit for Mira's paycheck got rerouted to a holding account, pending resolution of our marital issues. All perfectly legal, all documented, all designed to make their lives significantly more complicated. Kayla felt the squeeze first. When her debit card got declined at lunch, she called me screaming. "What did you do?" she demanded. "I can't buy anything." "Funny how that works," I said calmly. "Maybe you should ask your mother and Uncle Silas to cover your expenses. I'm sure they'd be happy to help." "You're such a loser. I hate you." "Yeah, well, the feeling's mutual these days. Actions have consequences, sweetheart. Time you learned that." She hung up on me, but I wasn't finished. The video she'd posted last week, mocking me for being a pathetic loser who couldn't keep his wife, had gotten over 50,000 views. Time for some consequences. I forwarded the video to the parents of every kid in her class, along with a note expressing my concern about cyberbullying and asking for their support in addressing this troubling behavior. Within hours, Kayla's phone was buzzing with angry calls from friends whose parents had grounded them for participating in the mockery. Mira came storming into my shop that afternoon, her professional composure cracking like cheap paint. "You can't cut off our daughter's money," she said. "She needs that account for school." She needed a father's respect, too, but that didn't stop her from humiliating me online. Funny how needs work both ways. "This is between you and me. Leave Kayla out of it." "You should have thought of that before you involved her in your little conspiracy. She made her choice, Mira. Now she gets to live with it." Mira's hands were shaking with rage. "You're being vindictive." "I'm being practical. You want to leave me for Silas? Fine. But you don't get to keep living off my income while you figure out your exit strategy." That evening, I made another strategic move. I called Nola Vero, Silas's wife. We'd never been close. She was a clinical psychologist who kept everyone at arm's length. But she was smart, and I had a feeling she might be interested in what I had to say. "Rylan," she said when she answered, her voice carefully neutral. "This is unexpected." "I imagine it is. We need to talk." "About what?" "About what your husband and my wife have been doing at the Riverside Inn for the past 3 months. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, she spoke. "I see. And you're calling me because?" "Because I think we might be able to help each other." We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from prying eyes. Nola was exactly what I expected. Cold, analytical, and absolutely furious beneath her composed exterior. "How long have you known?" she asked. "A few days. How long have you suspected?" "Months. Silas has been different, secretive. I found hotel receipts, unexplained expenses, but I needed proof." I slid a manila envelope across the table. "Consider this a gift." She opened it carefully, her expression never changing as she examined the photographs and documents I'd compiled. When she finished, she closed the envelope and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "What do you want in return?" "Your expertise. You understand people, how they think, what motivates them. I want to make sure they understand the full consequences of their choices." "Revenge, you mean?" "Justice. There's a difference." Nola smiled for the first time since I'd known her. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Yes," she said, "there is." Our partnership proved immediately useful. Nola knew things about Silas that I'd never suspected: his gambling debts, his cocaine habit, his history of borrowing money from client accounts to cover his losses. She also knew about Mira's financial troubles, including the fake degree that had gotten her hired at the law firm and the billing fraud she'd been committing to maintain her lifestyle. "They're both more vulnerable than they realize," Nola explained over dinner at a restaurant across town. "Silas is one audit away from prison. Mira is one background check away from disbarment. They've been propping each other up, but if one falls, they both fall," I finished. "Exactly." The plan we developed was elegant in its simplicity. Anonymous tips to the right people, carefully timed revelations, strategic pressure applied at just the right moments. Nothing illegal, nothing that couldn't be traced back to legitimate sources, but devastating in its cumulative effect. The first domino fell on Friday morning. Silas's boss received an anonymous package containing copies of altered client statements and suspicious transaction records. By lunch, Silas was suspended pending investigation. The second domino fell that afternoon. The State Bar Association received a tip about discrepancies in Mira's educational credentials and billing practices. Their investigation would take weeks, but the cloud of suspicion was immediate. By evening, both of them were calling me, desperate and panicked. "You have to stop this," Mira pleaded. "My career is everything to me." "Should have thought of that before you decided to throw away our marriage," I replied. Silas was less diplomatic. "You're going to regret this, brother. I have friends, connections. I can make your life very difficult." "You already did that when you started screwing my wife. Now I'm just returning the favor." But the real satisfaction came from watching them turn on each other. Stress has a way of revealing people's true character, and under pressure, Mira and Silas proved to be exactly as selfish and cowardly as I'd suspected. The cracks started showing at Anna's birthday party that weekend. I wasn't invited, of course, but Kayla was, and teenagers are remarkably bad at keeping secrets when they're upset. According to my daughter, Mira and Silas had a screaming match in Anna's kitchen, each blaming the other for their current predicament. Silas accused Mira of being reckless with the burner phone. Mira accused Silas of being stupid enough to use his real credit card at the hotel. The best part? Anna apparently recorded the whole thing on her phone, claiming she was documenting the drama for posterity. That recording would prove very useful in the days to come. Monday morning brought fresh chaos. Mira's law firm had placed her on administrative leave pending the Bar Association's investigation. Silas's suspension had become a termination after the audit revealed even more irregularities than expected. Both of them were facing professional ruin, and their panic was palpable. But I wasn't finished, not even close. The anonymous envelope I'd received still bothered me. Someone else was playing this game, someone who knew about Mira's relationship with Anna. I had my suspicions, but I needed proof. The proof came from an unexpected source. Kayla, desperate to restore her social standing after the fallout from her viral video, had been doing some detective work of her own. She showed up at my shop Tuesday afternoon with information that changed everything. "Anna's behind it," she said without preamble. "The whole thing. She's been manipulating Mom for months." I set down my wrench and gave her my full attention. "Explain." "I was at her house yesterday, and she was on the phone with someone talking about how everything was going according to plan. She said Mom was too stupid to realize she was being used, and that you deserved everything you got for ruining her life 5 years ago." 5 years ago. That's when I'd caught Anna embezzling from her previous law firm and reported it anonymously. She'd been fired, disbarred temporarily, and had to rebuild her career from scratch. I'd forgotten about it, but apparently she hadn't. "She orchestrated the whole affair," Kayla continued. "She introduced Mom to that dating app where she met up with Uncle Silas. She suggested the burner phone. She even recommended the hotel." The pieces clicked into place. Anna had been playing a long game, using Mira's dissatisfaction with our marriage and Silas's weakness for easy women to destroy my family. The affair wasn't about love or passion. It was about revenge. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Kayla looked uncomfortable. "Because I realized I was wrong about you, and because Anna's been using me too. She's the one who suggested I make that video. She said it would help Mom in the divorce." I felt something shift inside me, a slight thawing of the ice that had formed around my heart. My daughter was still a teenager, still impressionable and foolish, but she was trying to make things right. "What do you want me to do about it?" I asked. "I don't know, but Anna's planning something big for this weekend. She's having a party, and she's invited everyone, Mom, Uncle Silas, all their friends. She says it's going to be the perfect opportunity to finish what she started." A party. Public humiliation had been Anna's weapon from the beginning, and now she was planning the grand finale. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the quiet mechanic she'd been trying to destroy. I spent the rest of the week preparing. Nola proved invaluable, using her psychological expertise to help me understand Anna's motivations and predict her moves. We gathered evidence, documented everything, and prepared for what would be our final confrontation. The party was held at Anna's downtown loft, a minimalist space that screamed expensive taste and emotional emptiness. I wasn't invited, of course, but I didn't need to be. I had other plans. Instead, I spent Saturday evening at Sam's boxing gym, working out and waiting. The call came at 9:30. "Dad?" Kayla's voice was shaky. "You need to get down here. Anna's lost her mind." I arrived at the loft to find chaos. Police cars lined the street, their red and blue lights painting the building in garish colors. Neighbors stood on their balconies, craning their necks to see the drama unfolding below. Sam had come with me, claiming he wanted to make sure I didn't do anything stupid. Smart man. "What happened?" I asked the first cop I recognized, Detective Morrison, whose car I'd worked on a few times. "Domestic disturbance," he said. "Some kind of family dispute that got out of hand. No one's hurt, but there was a lot of screaming and some property damage." Through the loft's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the aftermath. Furniture overturned, broken glass, and in the center of it all, Anna Peterson in handcuffs, screaming at anyone who would listen. Kayla appeared at my elbow, her face pale but determined. "She completely lost it," she explained. "She had this whole presentation planned, with photos and videos and documents. She was going to expose everyone's secrets in front of all their friends and colleagues. But when she started the slideshow, it wasn't what she expected." "What do you mean?" "Someone had hacked her system. Instead of showing Mom and Uncle Silas's affair, it showed Anna's plan to destroy our family. Text messages, recorded phone calls, financial records showing how she'd been blackmailing Mom. Everything." I looked at my daughter with new respect. "Someone?" She smiled for the first time in weeks. "I may be just a teenager, but I know my way around computers. Anna shouldn't have left her laptop unprotected when she went to get more wine." The satisfaction was immediate and overwhelming. Anna had planned to destroy my family in front of their entire social circle, but instead, she'd destroyed herself. The evidence of her manipulation and blackmail was now in the hands of the police, the Bar Association, and about 50 of the most influential people in town. Mira emerged from the building, looking shell-shocked, followed by Silas, who appeared to be having some kind of breakdown. They saw me standing on the sidewalk and approached cautiously. "Did you know?" Mira asked. "About Anna, I mean." "I suspected, but I didn't orchestrate this." I looked at Kayla, who was trying very hard to look innocent. "That was someone else's idea." Silas was sweating, despite the cool evening air. "This is a disaster. My reputation, my career, are exactly what you deserve," I interrupted. "You made your choices, brother. Now you get to live with the consequences." "What happens now?" Mira asked quietly. I considered the question. Anna was finished. Her legal career was over, and she'd likely face criminal charges for blackmail and fraud. Silas was already ruined professionally and would probably face charges related to his client account irregularities. Mira's career was hanging by a thread, dependent on the outcome of multiple investigations. "Now you figure out how to rebuild your lives without destroying other people's families," I said finally, "and you stay away from mine." As we stood there in the flashing lights, watching Anna being loaded into a police car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The war was over, and while there were no real winners, justice had been served. The aftermath of Anna's public meltdown rippled through our small town like a stone thrown into still water. Within days, everyone knew the truth about the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed my family. The sympathy I'd been receiving as the wronged husband transformed into something else, respect, maybe even admiration for the way I'd handled the situation. But I wasn't finished yet. Mira moved back into our house, sleeping in the guest room and walking around like a ghost. She'd lost her job, her best friend, and her lover all in one spectacular evening. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a larger part remembered the months of humiliation and betrayal. Silas had disappeared entirely, probably hiding out in some cheap apartment while he waited for the criminal charges to be filed. Nola had filed for divorce and cleaned out their joint accounts, leaving him with nothing but debt and legal troubles. Kayla was trying to make amends, helping around the house and actually speaking to me with something approaching respect. It was a start, but trust would take time to rebuild. The reckoning I'd been planning came on a crisp October morning, exactly 1 month after Anna's party. I'd spent weeks preparing, gathering the last pieces of evidence I needed, and arranging for the perfect venue. The town's annual Founders' Day celebration was held in the community center, with most of the prominent families in attendance. It was the kind of event where reputations were made and broken, where social standing mattered more than truth. I arrived early, before the crowds, and made my way to the small stage where the mayor typically gave his annual address. The audiovisual equipment was already set up for the historical presentation that would follow lunch. It took me less than 10 minutes to connect my laptop to the system and load the presentation I'd been working on for weeks. Then I found my seat and waited. The morning passed pleasantly enough. I chatted with neighbors, shook hands with customers, and played the role of the wronged but dignified husband. Mira sat at a different table, surrounded by a few loyal friends who were either genuinely supportive or morbidly curious about her downfall. Silas didn't show up, which was probably wise. His legal troubles were mounting daily, and public appearances weren't advisable. After lunch, Mayor Henderson took the stage to introduce the historical presentation. But when he pressed the button to start the slideshow, my presentation began instead. The first slide was simple: the truth about the Ventor family conspiracy. A murmur ran through the crowd as people realized this wasn't the expected historical retrospective. Mayor Henderson fumbled with the controls, but I'd locked the system. The show would continue until it was finished. The next slides laid out the entire conspiracy in chronological order: Anna's initial plan for revenge, her manipulation of Mira's marital dissatisfaction, her introduction of Silas into the equation, and her orchestration of their affair. Every text message, every phone call, every piece of evidence was displayed for the entire town to see. The room was completely silent now, 200 people staring at the screen in fascination and horror. This was better than any soap opera, and it was happening right here in their community center. The presentation continued with Silas's financial crimes, Mira's professional misconduct, and Anna's blackmail scheme. Bank records, legal documents, recorded conversations, everything was there, presented with the methodical precision of a prosecutor making his case. But the final section was what I'd been building toward. DNA test results, obtained through a private lab using samples I'd collected from Silas's apartment during a brotherly visit to check on him. The results were clear and damning. The child Mira was carrying, the pregnancy she'd hidden from everyone, including me, belonged to Silas. The gasp that went up from the crowd was audible. Mira's face had gone completely white, her hands pressed to her still flat stomach. She'd thought her secret was safe, but I'd known about the pregnancy for weeks. The morning sickness she'd blamed on stress, the doctor's appointments she'd claimed were routine checkups. I'd been watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. The final slide was a simple message: actions have consequences. Choose wisely. As the presentation ended and the lights came up, I stood and walked to the stage. Mayor Henderson handed me the microphone without a word, his face a mixture of shock and reluctant admiration. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room, "I want to thank you all for your patience during what I know has been a difficult time for our community. The truth isn't always pleasant, but it's necessary." I looked directly at Mira, who was staring at me with something that might have been terror. "Some of you have asked me how I've managed to stay so calm during this ordeal," I continued. "The answer is simple. I believe in justice. Not revenge, not retribution, but justice. Everyone in this room now knows the truth about what happened to my family. You can draw your own conclusions about who deserves your respect and who doesn't." I set the microphone down and walked out of the community center, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces and whispered conversations. The story would be told and retold for years to come, growing in the telling until it became local legend. Outside, Kayla was waiting by my truck, her face a mixture of pride and concern. "Was that necessary?" she asked. "Yes," I said simply. "It was." "What happens now?" I looked back at the community center where people were starting to emerge, their voices rising as they processed what they'd just witnessed. Mira would face social ostracism, professional ruin, and single motherhood. Silas would likely go to prison. Anna was already facing criminal charges that would put her away for years. "Now we go home," I said, "and we figure out how to be a family again." As we drove through the streets of our small town, past the houses where our neighbors were probably already spreading the news of what they'd witnessed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: satisfaction. Not the hollow victory of revenge, but the deeper satisfaction of justice served. I'd kept my promise to myself. I'd shown them what a real man looks like when his family is threatened. Not through violence or cruelty, but through patience, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. The quiet mechanic they'd underestimated had proven to be their downfall. And in the end, that was enough. The truck's engine hummed smoothly as we headed home, past the boxing gym where I'd worked out my anger, past the auto shop where I'd planned my response, past all the familiar landmarks of a life I'd thought was over, but had instead transformed into something stronger. Villain? Maybe. But I cleaned up better than they lied. And sometimes that's all that matters.